Every night, laughter echoes from one of the 7 mirrors in Blackwood Manor, but no one is there to laugh. Have you ever looked into a mirror and felt like something was watching you? Something that wasn't you? That thought had always unsettled Lucy. Mirrors reflected reality, but sometimes she couldn't shake the feeling that they held something more. She didn't believe in ghosts, at least not completely. As a journalist for the Unseen Files, a blog dedicated to investigating urban legends, she had chased plenty of stories that led nowhere. Haunted houses, cursed objects, strange disappearances. Most of them were easily explained. But then came the letter. It arrived on a rainy afternoon, slipped under her apartment door with no postage, no return address. The paper was thick, yellowed at the edges, as if it had been waiting for years to be delivered. You are invited to Blackwood Manor. Midnight. Come alone. There was no name, no sender, just those words, written in ink, so dark it looked fresh. Lucy frowned. Blackwood Manor. She knew the name. It was an old estate on the outskirts of town, abandoned for decades. Local legends claimed it was cursed, that anyone who stayed inside after dark heard laughter coming from the mirrors. Some said the mirrors weren't ordinary reflections but doorways to something else. Most people avoided the place. Lucy, however, was not most people. She grabbed her camera, a flashlight, and a notebook. If this was a hoax, she would expose it. If not, she would find out the truth. Midnight. The road leading to Blackwood Manor was barely visible under the thick fog rolling in from the hills. Lucy's car headlights cut through the mist, illuminating the gnarled trees lining the driveway. The house itself stood at the end of a winding path, its Gothic structure towering against the night sky. She parked, stepping out onto the damp ground. The air smelled of rain and old wood. Despite the eerie silence, she felt a strange pull, as if the house had been expecting her. The front door was unlocked. It groaned as she pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with dust. Faded wallpaper peeled from the walls, and chandeliers hung like skeletons, their crystals dulled by time. But what caught Lucy's attention were the mirrors. 7 of them. Each one stood in a different part of the house. One in the grand hallway, another in the dining room, one at the base of the staircase, another at the end of the second floor corridor. They were large, framed in intricate silver, their glass oddly pristine despite the decay around them. She lifted her camera, snapping a few pictures. That's when she heard it. Laughter. Soft, distant, but unmistakable. Lucy froze, her grip tightening on the flashlight. The sound wasn't coming from the rooms around her. It was coming from one of the mirrors. She turned slowly, her heart pounding. The mirror in the hallway, just a few feet away, rippled like the surface of a disturbed pond. Lucy swallowed. Trick of the light, she told herself. Just an old house, settling. Still, she stepped closer. Her reflection stared back at her, wide-eyed and tense. But then, something moved behind her. She spun around. Nothing. She turned back to the mirror and saw her reflection still facing away, as if she hadn't turned back at all. Lucy's breath caught in her throat. That wasn't possible. Slowly, her reflection turned to face her again. But something was wrong. It was smiling, and Lucy wasn't. A chill ran down her spine. She took a step back, her mind racing for an explanation. Maybe it was an illusion, a trick of the glass. Maybe the mirrors weren't as clean as they looked, creating distortions. But the more she stared, the more uneasy she felt. The smile on her reflection's face widened, too wide, stretching beyond what was natural. And then, the worst part, something else moved in the reflection. A figure standing just behind her, tall, pale, featureless. Lucy didn't scream. She didn't run. She couldn't. Her body refused to move, as if the air itself had thickened around her. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished. Her reflection was normal again. No smile, no extra person, just her. Lucy let out a shaky breath. Maybe she was imagining things. Maybe the old stories had gotten into her head. But before she could convince herself further, something made her blood run cold. A sound, not laughter this time. Breathing, right behind her ear. She spun, flashlight raised. The house was empty, and yet the mirrors, they were watching. Lucy's breath came in short, rapid bursts. She swept her flashlight across the grand hallway, searching for any sign of movement. The air felt thick, charged with something unseen. She knew what she had heard. The breathing had been real. Low, deliberate, too close, but there was no one there. Her gaze flicked back to the large mirror at the end of the hallway. Its surface was still, reflecting the dimly lit corridor behind her. No strange figures, no distorted smiles, just her. Still, the feeling of being watched remained. Lucy forced herself to take a step forward. She needed to stay calm, to focus. Maybe there was an explanation for all of this. Old houses had drafts. Mirrors could play tricks on the eyes. But deep down, she knew this was different. Her flashlight beam landed on a doorway leading deeper into the house. She hesitated, but retreating wasn't an option. She had come here for answers. With each step, the floor creaked beneath her. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with aged paintings and dark wooden paneling. The scent of dust and something faintly metallic lingered in the air. Then she heard it, a rhythmic creaking sound, slow and deliberate. It was coming from upstairs. Lucy swallowed hard. It sounded like a rocking chair moving back and forth. A memory surfaced, an old article she had read about Blackwood Manor. The last owner, Eleanor Blackwood, had been known to sit for hours in her favorite rocking chair by the window, watching the world pass by. But Eleanor Blackwood had died decades ago. Lucy tightened her grip on the flashlight and made her way up the grand staircase. The wooden steps groaned under her weight, each footstep echoing in the empty house. The higher she climbed, the louder the creaking became. At the end of the hallway, a door stood slightly ajar. The nursery. Lucy hesitated before pushing the door open. The room was frozen in time. Dust-covered toys lay scattered on the floor. A crib stood against the wall, and in the corner an old wooden rocking chair swayed back and forth. But there was no one sitting in it. She stepped closer, her heartbeat hammering in her chest. The chair slowed, then stopped completely. The room was silent. Lucy exhaled, her breath visible in the suddenly frigid air. She glanced at the walls, faded wallpaper decorated with pale blue flowers. A wooden shelf lined with old dolls. There, glass eyes staring blankly into the room. Then, a whisper. barely audible. "They see you now." Lucy's blood turned to ice. She spun around, flashlight beam darting across the room. Nothing. The whisper had been right next to her ear. She backed toward the door, her pulse roaring in her ears. As she turned to leave, her gaze landed on something she hadn't noticed before. A mirror, smaller than the others, standing against the far wall. Its frame was painted white, chipped with age, and in its reflection, a child, a little girl in an old-fashioned nightgown, stood just behind Lucy, her dark hair falling over her face. Lucy froze. Every instinct screamed at her not to turn around. But she did. The room was empty. Slowly, she turned back to the mirror. The girl was still there, but now she was smiling. Lucy stumbled back, knocking into the rocking chair. It creaked loudly as it tipped, crashing onto the wooden floor. A gust of cold air swept through the room, and the mirror's surface rippled. Then, the reflection changed. The girl was gone. In her place, something else stared back at Lucy. A tall, shadowy figure with hollow eyes and an unnatural grin. Lucy's breath caught in her throat. Then the whisper returned. "You shouldn't have come." The lights flickered. The temperature dropped even further. The air crackled with an unseen force. And then, the mirror shattered. Glass shards flew in every direction. But before Lucy could react, the pieces froze in midair. They hovered, suspended, as if caught in time. Then, they began rearranging themselves, forming words in the empty space where the mirror had once been. "Help us." A deep chill settled in Lucy's bones. The air around her seemed to hum, the very walls of the house vibrating with unseen energy. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The glass shards fell to the floor, clinking softly against the wood. The temperature returned to normal. The house was silent once more. Lucy staggered backward, breathing hard. She had seen many strange things in her time as a paranormal journalist, but nothing like this. She needed to leave. Now. She turned on her heel, rushing out of the nursery and down the hall. But as she reached the staircase, she caught sight of the large mirror at the end of the corridor. Her own reflection stared back at her, wide-eyed, pale, shaken, and standing just behind her was the little girl. Lucy bolted down the stairs, her feet barely touching the steps. She reached the grand hallway, her eyes darting toward the front door. But then, a sound stopped her in her tracks. Laughter, not just from one place, from every mirror in the house. Low at first, then rising, echoing, surrounding her. Lucy's breath came in ragged gasps. She had to get out, but as she reached for the door, the laughter stopped. Silence, and then a whisper, soft, playful. "See you soon, Lucy." Her heart nearly stopped. No one had said her name. She hadn't told anyone she was coming. Her hands shook as she grabbed the doorknob and yanked the door open. Cold night air rushed in, and without looking back, she ran. Behind her, the house loomed in the darkness. The mirrors stood tall, their surfaces smooth and still. But if anyone had been watching closely, they would have seen a figure in one of the mirrors. A little girl, smiling and waving goodbye. Lucy didn't stop running until she reached her car. Her fingers fumbled for the keys, her breathing ragged. She yanked the door open and collapsed into the driver's seat, locking the doors behind her. For a few seconds, she just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to calm the tremor in her hands. The house loomed in her rearview mirror, its dark windows like watching eyes. The whisper still echoed in her mind. "See you soon, Lucy." No one was supposed to know she was coming. She turned the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered once, twice, then died. Lucy cursed under her breath and tried again. Nothing. Her car had never given her trouble before. But tonight of all nights, it refused to start. She checked her phone. No signal. Her only option was to wait until morning and hope someone passed by. But that meant spending the night in the car, alone, with that house standing behind her. A movement in the rearview mirror caught her eye. Her stomach clenched. The front door of the house was open. She was certain she had shut it when she ran out. Lucy swallowed hard, forcing herself to look away. She needed to think logically. Maybe the wind had blown it open. Maybe. Then, something else moved. Not outside. Inside her car. A shadow flickered across the back seat in the mirror. Lucy's breath hitched. She spun around. Nothing. The back seat was empty. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it. Maybe her mind was playing tricks on her. Maybe it was exhaustion, fear. Maybe a faint laugh. From the mirror, Lucy snapped her head back to the rearview mirror. And there, sitting in the back seat, was a girl. The same girl from the mirror inside the house. Lucy froze. The child's face was partially obscured by her dark hair, but Lucy could see her pale skin, her small hands folded neatly in her lap. The girl smiled. Then, the car's interior went cold. Lucy's breath came out in a shaky gasp. She gripped the door handle, ready to run. But before she could move, the girl whispered, "You can't leave." Lucy's vision blurred as something pulled her backward. A force, unseen but overwhelming, dragging her against the seat. The car's windows fogged over. Words formed on the glass, written by invisible fingers. "Look at the mirror." Lucy squeezed her eyes shut. No, she wouldn't look. She wouldn't. A sharp breath right next to her ear. "Look at the mirror, Lucy." She didn't want to, but something made her. Her gaze lifted slowly, unwillingly, and in the rearview mirror she saw herself. Only, it wasn't just her. Behind her reflection, shadows moved. Figures emerged, tall, gaunt, hollow-eyed. They filled the mirror, pressing against the glass, their mouths opening and closing in silent words. Lucy's reflection didn't react. It just sat there, watching. Then, it smiled. The reflection lifted a hand and tapped the glass from the other side. Sharp crack ran through the mirror. Lucy's body jolted as if something had struck her. Then, darkness. She woke up on the ground, cold and disoriented. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was. The sky above her was still dark, the air damp with early morning mist. Then, it all rushed back. The car, the mirror, the girl. Lucy scrambled to her feet, heart hammering. She was no longer in the car. She was back inside the house. The grand hallway stretched before her, the 7 mirrors standing tall. The front door, the one she had run through, was shut. No, this wasn't possible. She had escaped. She had left, hadn't she? Her fingers trembled as she reached for her phone. The screen was black. It wouldn't turn on. A whisper, not a voice this time. Something softer, more insidious. A whisper of movement. She turned her head slowly. One of the mirrors was shifting. No, not shifting. Rippling as if it were made of liquid instead of glass. Lucy took a step back. Her own reflection didn't. It stayed perfectly still, watching her with wide, unblinking eyes. Then, without warning, it reached out. A hand. Her hand emerged from the mirror. Lucy stumbled backward, her breath catching in her throat. The hand groped at the air, searching. And then, another hand emerged, and another, and another. From all 7 mirrors, hands reached out. Some pale, some darkened with age, some too thin, some clawed. They wanted her. Lucy turned and ran. The hallway stretched longer than before, as if the house itself was shifting, twisting to keep her trapped. The doors she passed were locked. The windows were fogged over, showing only reflections, distorted images of her own terrified face. The laughter returned, rising behind her, echoing from the mirrors. Lucy turned a corner and stopped. At the end of the hall stood the 7th mirror, the largest, the oldest, and inside it, she saw herself, but not as she was now. The reflection of Lucy in the 7th mirror looked different, calmer, smiling, and waiting. A voice, soft and knowing, drifted from the glass. "Come closer." Lucy shook her head, her body trembling. "Come closer, Lucy." Her reflection lifted a hand. So did Lucy. No, she didn't mean to. Something was pulling her in. She tried to stop, but her feet moved forward. The mirror rippled, the surface, like water, shimmering with an unseen force. Her reflection reached for her, and the last thing she saw before the world went dark was herself, smiling from the other side of the glass. The moment Lucy's fingers brushed the mirror's surface, a sharp, icy jolt surged through her body. She gasped, but no sound came out. The world around her twisted, warping like a distorted reflection in rippling water. Then, silence. When she opened her eyes, she was no longer in the hallway. She was inside the mirror. The realization hit her like a punch to the stomach. Everything looked the same. Blackwood Manor's grand hallway stretched before her. The same dim chandeliers, the same aged wallpaper. But something was wrong. The air was thick, suffocating, as if it had weight. The colors were muted, duller than before. And the worst part, the mirrors were gone. Lucy turned in circles, her pulse racing. Where were the 7 mirrors? Where was the real world? She rushed to the nearest wall, pressing her hands against the surface. Cold, smooth, glass. She wasn't in the house. She was in its reflection. A soft sound echoed behind her. Footsteps. Lucy spun around. At the far end of the hallway, someone stood watching her. No, not someone. Herself. Her reflection. But it wasn't a reflection anymore. It was real. The other Lucy stood just outside the mirror, in the real world, staring back at her. And she was smiling. Lucy's stomach turned. Her reflection had taken her place. She rushed forward, pounding on the invisible barrier. "Let me out," she screamed. But no sound escaped. It was like shouting underwater. The other Lucy tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, She lifted her hand and placed her palm against the glass. Lucy mirrored the motion without thinking. A cold sensation crawled up her arm. Her vision blurred for a second, her mind filling with fog. Then, a whisper, not from her reflection, from behind her. She turned. The hallway stretched into darkness, but within it, figures began to emerge. Dozens of them, men, women, children, their bodies thin and colorless, their faces eerily blank. Some had wide, staring eyes, while others had none at all. Their mouths hung open, as if frozen mid-scream. Lucy stumbled back, her breath catching. These weren't ghosts. They were the trapped people who had been pulled into the mirrors, and they had been here for a very, very long time. The figures moved toward her, their hollow eyes filled with something far worse than malice, desperation. Lucy turned back to the glass. Her reflection was still watching, still smiling, still refusing to let her go. Lucy slammed her fists against the surface. "Please," she mouthed, "let me out." The other Lucy's expression shifted slightly. The smile faded just a little. Then, she turned and walked away, leaving Lucy behind. Panic surged through her. She turned back to the approaching figures. They were closer now, their silent mouths moving, whispering words she couldn't hear. No, she wouldn't end up like them. There had to be a way out. Lucy's mind raced. The mirrors had power, but so did reflections. If her copy had taken her place, then could she take it back? She whirled around, searching, and then she saw it. A small, faint glimmer in the distance. A single mirror. The only one in this world. The others had been taken away, but this one remained. Hope surged in Lucy's chest. She ran. The figures let out silent gasps, their movements quickening. Some reached for her, their fingers brushing her skin, cold as death. But Lucy didn't stop. She reached the mirror, hands pressing against its glassy surface. On the other side, she saw her reflection again. Only this time, it wasn't watching her with amusement. It was afraid. Lucy understood instantly. The reflection had made a mistake. It had taken her place too soon, and now she was taking it back. She grabbed the edges of the mirror and pulled. A force tried to resist her, but she held on, ignoring the chill spreading through her bones. The figures behind her screamed silently, their mouths stretching unnaturally wide. The mirror rippled, cracks splintered across the surface. Then it shattered, and the world flipped. Lucy gasped as she collapsed onto the wooden floor of Blackwood Manor. She was out. The house was normal again. If Blackwood Manor could ever be called normal. The mirrors stood in their usual places, their glass still and silent. And her reflection, it was hers again. Lucy let out a shaky breath, pushing herself up. She glanced around. The house was empty. The whispers were gone. The laughter had faded, but something felt different. She turned to the largest mirror. Her reflection moved as it should, matching her every action. But just before she looked away, for a fraction of a second, her reflection smiled, and it wasn't her own. Lucy stood frozen in front of the mirror, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She had made it out. She was back. But that last moment, that smile, made her doubt everything. Her reflection stared at her, perfectly normal now. No strange expressions, no delayed movements. It was just her. Or was it? A chill crawled up Lucy's spine. She had to get out of this house. She turned away from the mirrors, rushing toward the front door. Her boots echoed in the empty hallway, the sound unnervingly loud. With trembling hands, she reached for the doorknob and twisted, locked. Lucy's stomach dropped. She hadn't locked the door. She rattled the handle harder, panic rising. It wouldn't budge. Something didn't want her to leave. The house was still watching. A sudden creak from behind made her whip around. One of the mirrors had moved. She knew it was impossible. Mirrors didn't move. But there it was, shifted slightly from its original position. Then another one shifted, and another. 7 mirrors, tall and heavy, began to turn toward her. Lucy stepped back, pressing herself against the door. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Then, a whisper, soft, familiar. "Lucy, you never really left." Her breath caught. The voice came from inside the mirrors. She forced herself to look. Her reflection was still there, but she wasn't alone. Behind her reflection, figures pressed against the glass. The same pale, hollow-eyed figures she had seen in the mirror world. They stood just behind her reflection, their empty mouths moving soundlessly. Then, her own reflection blinked, not in sync with her. It was independent now. The realization hit Lucy like a cold wave of terror. She hadn't escaped. She had switched places again. The thing standing outside the mirror, the thing wearing her face, wasn't her. It had tricked her. Lucy stumbled forward, pressing her hands against the glass. "No," she mouthed. "No, no, no." The reflection tilted its head, watching her with a slow, amused smile. Then it turned and walked away. Lucy banged on the glass. "Come back, let me out," but no sound escaped. The last thing she saw before the room round her faded was herself, walking away from the mirror, leaving her behind forever. Epilogue. A week later, Blackwood Manor was empty again. No one had seen Lucy since the night she entered. Her car was found abandoned near the gate, the driver's side door open as if she had left in a hurry. But she was gone. No footprints leading away, no sign of struggle, just gone. And inside the house, the mirrors stood undisturbed. Their glass was smooth, perfect, almost, because if you looked closely, just closely enough, in the 7th mirror there was a figure, a woman, pressing her hands against the glass, her mouth open in a silent scream.